Hello everybody and welcome to the Isolation Conversation with me, Mark Stokes, a series of videos designed to discuss all things digital whilst working remotely in isolation. This week is episode 3 and we're talking about isolation in education. I'll be joined by three very good friends, Alex Pearce, Darren Hemming and Mark Jones, who can talk about what's going on at the front line of delivering technology into education institutions and schools so that teachers can facilitate and deliver remote learning, remote lessons and discuss everything else that's going on. Hi everybody, thank you for joining us. So I'm here with Alex, Darren and Mark, and we're going to talk about education and isolation. So first thing we'll do is we'll go through a round of introductions. So everyone, can you just tell me your name, who you are, maybe who you work for, and maybe something that you've learned in the last week. And we'll start on my top left, we'll start with Alex.
Hello, so I'm Alex Pearce. I'm a Microsoft MVP, have been now for 12 years. I run a company called BFC Networks. We solely do Office 365 in the education space. I do a bit of technical training and solution architecture with schools, maths, all the way through to governments and supporting them with their large-scale deployments and obviously with their remote learning as it actually currently stands.
Great. Darren?
I'm Darren Hemming. I work for Cloud Design Box. I'm the teaching and learning lead, and I spend most of my days talking to schools and teachers, trying to get user adoption in place and help with things like virtual lessons.
Cool.
Hi, I'm Mark Jones. I'm head of physics and director of e-learning at Oldham Hulme Grammar School, which is a 3 to 18 school. And it's been what I've learned this year. I mean, I'm teaching for 15 years, but it's been so amazing seeing videos of colleagues that I've never seen them teach before and little videos of how they're interacting with their classes, you know, something. So I'm a physics teacher. I'm mixed with those people all the time, there's other scientists, but seeing like maybe the English teacher just kind of setting his first topic, which was, you know, he's talking about his favourite poem, sat up on the moor, almost doing this blog post, and then kind of saying, right, I want your first assignment is going to be to go out into nature. I want you to find something that inspires you, and I want you to write a poem about nature. And it was just amazing seeing how innovative people have been. Yeah, it's been great.
Fantastic. That's awesome. So that's a really good thing. So yeah, there's been a lot of things learned over the last couple of weeks and that. So Alex, what's something specific that you've learned maybe in the last week? Maybe it could be to this situation or something completely different, but
that I can work till 4 o'clock in the morning to try and to deliver demand with customers. I think that's one of the things, and still get up at 8 o'clock in the morning. Nothing specific comes to mind because it's just been so busy. The demand and the requirements and that have come out from customers are just huge, and to be able to meet that challenge is the challenge in kind of having to learn on the go is quite an important thing. Managing time, managing expectation is again different because you can't go and see them. You can't always spend time in the same way on a call and you can do in kind of, as I say, in person. So yeah, it's challenging times. Nothing specific comes to mind when it comes to learning other than how to set a Minecraft background in Teams.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about backgrounds in a moment. So yeah. Great. Darren, what have you learned in the last week?
Well, similar to Alex, really, because we've been so busy. We've had to change our processes. Normally it takes kind of 6 to 8 weeks to do the whole project end to end for a school. And suddenly schools have needed it done in like a week and a half or less. So we've had to turn things on its side, do some things backwards, come back and do some other things later. So that's been the real challenge. Another thing I've learned is that milk tastes better out of bottles than it does from cartons.
It so does. We've had our local milkman deliver for a couple of years actually, and we've always supported that. I'm all for proper milk bowls. I'll tell you what I've learned over the last week. I've learned that schools are not all closed. I thought all the schools were closed. Teachers were off on holiday, having an extended summer, and that absolutely nothing was going on. But actually, putting this together, I've realised from you guys that there is a lot going on here, and schools are not just closed full stop. But actually, there is a lot.
And it's worth saying they're open even now, even though it's meant to be the Easter holiday weeks. So I look out the window here. to my left, and I can see a school, and I can see kids outside playing cricket.
Right.
That's what they're doing outside. They're playing. So the challenge is not just during the kind of the normal teaching hours. It's also now as well to support them. There are people who were calling me on Monday. Monday was a bank holiday. Normally you wouldn't hear anybody on an Easter bank holiday Monday, but that's the challenge that we're currently facing to support the education system and the kids and the teachers to be able to still deliver some form of education.
That's an interesting point there, actually, and maybe we'll come back to it later, but just to raise it now is the fact that people are generally working from home and remote and away from the workplace. Are we actually more open all hours because people aren't in the office certain hours doing work? So we'll come back to that point a little bit later on, but let's just hold that thought. So Mark, did you have something to...
Yeah, I mean, you can just see the fact that people are working all the time. I mean, driving more towards Twitter and stuff, and just seeing questions don't stop. That conversation goes on whatever time of night, whatever day it is, and it's just people saying, "I'm trying this, I'm doing this one," and yeah, our technical support, like with you guys, had to work basically just whatever time. Our principal's quite good. Our head teacher, he tries to lay down lines to try and say, right, take your emails off your phones, only have them on your Chromebooks when you're working, and don't feel under pressure to respond to anybody straight away. But I think staff still are doing that, and it's trying to manage that different workflow is probably one of the hardest things that teachers are having to deal with at the moment, actually.
Interesting. So I'm interested to know a little bit about the landscape of education then. Like we said, the schools are open. So what does it look like then from the ground? What are the teachers doing? Kind of, are they working full time? Is it a small proportion of them are actually reaching out and doing stuff? What are the schools and the teachers actually doing at the moment?
Well, I suppose from my point of view, I've mostly got experience from my own school, but my wife is also a teacher, and they have a one-to-one iPad, so they're doing different things there. And I've got various friends at different places. So just talk from our kind of point of view, we're trying to maintain really that structure and communication, which I think is important in terms of lessons are still happening according to the school timetable. So teachers are supposed to be around to answer questions at those points, and that can be done in a variety of different ways. So we're still having that structure, the communication. We're even still doing assemblies in the morning, so the principal and other members of staff will be doing assemblies. And it's been quite interesting how many parents have said that they're watching the lessons, they're watching the assemblies, and kind of it's building that culture a little bit together, and that's been interesting. So yeah, that's been the hard part, though. We've said we'll stick to the timetable, so classes are done like that. The schemes of work are still maintaining the same path, and we had a 2-week block before Easter where we could sort of try a few different things, get some feedback from. We're looking at feedback from parents, feedback from pupils, and feedback from teachers as to how it's all going. So yeah, we looked at that, and then I don't know if you want to tackle that now, but kind of the things that we've learned from that and how we'll maybe go forward from here.
Yeah, we'll come back onto that point after. I think it'd be interesting.
I was going to ask about that, Mark, about whether you're just doing the normal timetable, because I know that a lot of the schools that we work with, they've looked at it and they said, well, we can't sustain this. We can't do what we would normally do for a 1 hour lesson or 1 hour and 10 minutes. We can't do that over a video because of concentration levels and having to look at the screen. So they've done kind of condensed timetables. Some schools have done it for just what they call the core subjects. So, your maths, your English, a bit of science, and other subjects have merged into the background a little bit.
Okay.
We've got different examples. Again, I think everybody's making it up. That's the thing. They're making it up. Yeah. They're learning from what's right, what doesn't work, and I think they're trying to fit the need of the school, because every school is different. Every set of kids are necessarily different as well. We've got one school, that independent school, all the kids have already got laptops. They were using a tool called Microsoft OneNote Class Notebook, so digital note taking for the classroom. Every kid was using it. They sent them all home from the boarding school. The following Monday, every single kid turned up for the first lesson online in Teams. Wow. 100%. Nobody didn't turn up. Everybody turned up. And I think that's a real compliment to the kids and also the school for the ethos that they put in. And so they've just continued. So that 1 hour, yes, they might be on a team, but they're not expected to sit and watch the screen. They're expected to do the work that they've been set. And that's slightly different to what you were just saying, kind of, Darren, is kind of, you're not being lectured to for an hour, but you're still expected to work during that time.
Yes. It's almost redefined. It's making us think about, what do we call a lesson? If we're talking about 1 hour's worth of lesson, is that really 1 hour's worth of listening to the teacher and an activity with the teacher? Or is it just the teacher coming in, saying hello, presenting something new, and then handing it over to the students, and the students getting on with it for the next 40 minutes, and the teacher's kind of just there, perhaps on the chat if they're needed?
Yeah, but I think that, I mean, there are loads of different ways you could do this, aren't there? As soon as you go away from having a physical building that can only have 30 kids in it and with one teacher there, you can change it up completely, can't you? You get to the stage where where we're talking about universities doing this, and you've got a Brian Cox star lecture, say, who could lecture to multiple different people. Why do you need that to be going on separately with just 100 people in every lecture hall? Why are we doing those kind of things? So it's how far do we push it, and taking everyone with you as you go, I guess. We can keep certain things the same, because we've got one-to-one Chromebooks, so all our students are used to using Google Classroom and stuff to set, lesson objectives will be there, and docs will be on there. Parents then get summaries of that information and things. But we've had that. So, I mean, one of the feedbacks was interesting. Should we keep it as the work is scheduled to arrive, say, 5 minutes before the lesson? And then it's due at the end of the lesson, and if it's done after that, it will flag up as late, and students can't access it before that. And how much quantity of work would you be setting for that time, and what kind of tasks and stuff? So some students have asked, could we do it a more Netflix style, where the work's all there at the start of the day and we can pick and choose? And I said, I feel like doing my maths straight away, or I want to get in with my English and do that, or do I have to stick to my timetable, releasing an episode every week rather than binging the whole thing? But then it gets into
I know my normal working day, sometimes I'm just not in the mood to do my finances. Sometimes I'm just not in the mood to get my head into a document for 3 hours. Sometimes I need to mix it up and do what I can focus on at that time. So we don't really give kids, I mean, I'm not an expert like you guys, but we don't really give kids that opportunity, do we, with a fixed timetable? They have to turn the brain on to a particular topic at a particular time. So I wonder if there's a lesson here that we will learn throughout this, that actually maybe some way to give kids a bit more flexibility, if that can work or not. And I think another point, a point I made for later on as well, is whether the things that we can do are different for the different ages of child as well, through primary, secondary, sixth form, things like that. So there might be a variance there depending on who we're talking about.
Yeah, and that's the challenge. Is primary school is different to secondary school, and further to the point I was just making about that school who had that 100% attendance of everybody on the team, the conversation kind of went on to is that actually that's an education ethos that you have built into the kids, and the importance of being in a lesson to learn. So I kind of said the question, well, what if you started a virtual school? Well, actually, the kids have all got to have that education ethos into them to turn up for the lessons, to do the work, whether that's at the beginning of the day in that Netflix style, which I love the idea of, or if it is, but you've still got to at some point have that form of ethos to be able to do it. So if you had new year 7s coming in, let's say tomorrow, and it was beginning of September, how would you do classrooms? And I think that's a completely different challenge, because they don't know the kids, they don't know friends necessarily, they don't know the teacher, they don't know the ethos of the school. So I really do hope is that schools are back till September, because that's a good point of setting an education ethos for the school.
I think the other bit being, though, that quite often when they get stuck on something, especially the younger you are, the more often maybe you need to ask for help. And if you are doing that Netflix style, what we thought was, they get stuck on their maths homework, but that teacher's actually supposed to be delivering a different class, and you monitoring all your classes at once. It was kind of almost a workload issue in terms of it keeps it more manageable. And also maybe gives the kids a structure, as in you're only expected to spend this 1 hour on this one topic. But you're right, that maybe there's some other skills that I actually personally think that we're going to get back in September. Say if it does start back in September, that the kids and the teachers and support people are all going to be more skilled in many different ways. They're going to be more independent. They're going to be more resilient, I think. And I think that actually, if it's a short-term thing and we put good quality resources in there that they've still maintained progress, they're actually learning a lot of other skills alongside the content. I think that we could end up actually taking that, what I hope to at our place, take this forward. And when you get back into a classroom, why not? Now that teachers are skilled in doing screencasts at the beginning of a lesson, summarising that, why have it that we've got, one of the biggest TED Talks was this Ken Robinson one about do skills kill creativity? And we go across this Victorian factory model where, okay, you're year 7, we'll fill you with this stuff. Right now you're in year 8, you can do that. Well, now that we've got more flexibility now in the fact that kids can work through stuff at different paces. In a science lesson, I don't see why we couldn't, come back in September when everyone's used to kind of, all right, we'll log in, we'll do our work. And then when it gets to the practical bit, I'll go over here, get my kit. Another kid's not quite up to that bit yet. And they've got you to help. They can ask questions. I think it could be quite amazing what we could develop going forward from here.
Yeah, it's an opportunity.
Sorry, go on, Darren.
I was going to say, it's the opportunity to do those things we always talk about, but there's just no time in the school day because the school day and the hours are so important. We must stick to the school day. But we can now look at cross-curricular stuff. Why can't you mix your maths and your English and your science into big projects? And you can do more of that kind of project-based learning where you're working towards something. And in order to achieve that objective, you have to learn a bit of English and you have to do a bit of maths. And you have to do a bit of science to achieve that, instead of kind of doing it the other way around, which is what we do at the moment.
I think I found that from my maths and obviously I'm going back quite a long time now, but from my maths and physics exams previously, I actually thought they were largely more English than maths and physics, so I had to understand the question to be able to understand what's been asked. But anyway, that's a whole other side. But one thing that's quite exciting for me is that one of the things I've spoken about in the past a number of times is actually the preparedness of young people coming into the workplace. So people coming in knowing how an office environment works, knowing how the workplace goes. And I don't generally feel that people come out of this education system or the college system.
Don't get me started, Mark. Don't get me started. I could be here for hours if you want to talk about that.
This is almost going to help them say, this is how we work. So now we do use Microsoft Teams, we do use Google Hangouts, things like that to actually collaborate with our peers. So actually maybe it's going to help them come into our world a little bit. And that's normally I find that they're kind of, the kids are trying to bring in the new technologies and we're the old stalwarts kind of maybe resisting some, but there's a disconnect, and maybe this is going to help bring them a little bit more prepared for workplace. But as Alex says, this is something me and him could probably for a very long time. But
we mustn't forget kind of what we're talking about here are schools who've got good IT infrastructure. They've got a good ethos on kids that are going to learn, all that kind of stuff. But there are other schools where the kids haven't got devices at home, who aren't able to do things now. And the challenge for them is to just bring them back in. And they potentially had no education 12 weeks, maybe more than that. So there's going to be different ends of the spectrum for schools to be able to deliver stuff. Even ones where there'll be schools where the kids have been able to do stuff at home. They do have laptops where they can kind of got one that the parents give them that they can use. But when they go back to school, they're not going to have that digital equipment. So we're going to face additional challenges in some schools because they have changed the way they teach, but now they're going to go back to the old one.
That's a very good point, and I guess that could almost increase the divide in the lack of education as well, because one of the key things I've seen in the news is obviously all the exams have been cancelled now, but that's not necessarily a cause to stop. But actually, if we are continuing to educate the kids who can afford to have technology and access, and then we're going to push them a little bit further, and then maybe the poorer kids are going to get further behind because they don't have access to that, as opposed to that whole year group stopping at the same point and missing the same amount to keep them on a balance. Some of these kids can't even afford a hot dinner a day and rely on school for that. So I wonder if there's even more of a divide based on what Alex said. That was a good point.
Yes, school was in some ways a great leveler. I mean, obviously different kinds of schools and they've got different budgets to buy nice things. But essentially, if you go to school, there's an opportunity for you to learn. There's a teacher and there's a classroom and there's a desk and some sort of books. At the moment, that's not going to be the case. There'll be some kids, as we've said, that don't have those devices. And that's a really interesting point, Alex, that when those kids go back and perhaps they have been using just a simple tablet at home, they won't be able to take that into school with them because that tablet now is between 3 kids. in the house, and they have to take it in turns. So there is a question there about how do schools deal with that when this all ends, and is this an opportunity, but also something that's going to cost money?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the research is, but in terms of if you ask most kids, they seem to have a smartphone. But maybe I'm moving in just from my last few schools. But you're right, there are kids who you can't get a hot dinner. So, but how many phones are floating around, and the what can we do mobile phone based? I mean, a lot of the apps that will work, say on the Chromebook, will work in a browser, which will work on Safari or Android or one of the browsers. But you are really right. The gap could be exacerbated by this.
and you never know, and this has always been the problem with bring your own device as such, is are they in Teams, are they in Google Hangouts, are they in Word doing their work, or are they on Snapchat messaging the mate next to them? And that's always the challenge of kind of bring your own device. You haven't got this structure, and again that comes down to that ethos and that what is education, what does it really mean, and do the kids really value it?
Or we could flip it on its head and put it the other way. So actually, if we can provide some kind of device for deprived kids to get access on, then maybe we can reach out to some of those communities that may have otherwise been slipped through the gaps. And maybe because if we can prove that actually we can educate kids in this way, that could be a business case to actually help deliver them some kind of device to access something, and maybe that can help them. So
absolutely, it's all about funding. It's all about funding. If the money was there and the right transformation was there, I'm sure every school could afford that. But those aren't the times that we're living in.
And this is a conversation that I know you guys have had about some of the work we've done in the past. I know you guys have over and over. And it's constant funding and education. It's like, it's like they go together, and always have done. But, again, it's throwing up the deficiencies of the NHS through this period. Maybe it's going to throw up the deficiencies of education. So maybe if the conversation gets loud enough, then maybe going forward and say, do you know what, maybe we should invest in. Who knows? We won't get political. That's definitely not.
That wasn't my intent. just to say, I'm just saying these are the general challenges from the bottom to the top kind of thing.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about technology then. So actually, it's quite nice. Normally, I come from a Microsoft background, but it's quite nice that we have some representation here of Google Classroom as well. So as far as I'm concerned, this topic is definitely technology agnostic. Tools is a facilitator, as we know. So let's just talk a little bit about some of the tools that actually we do use to enable teachers and remote learning. So I don't know who wants to go first. It's not a battle royale by any sense. So that's not what we're here for. But yeah, let's just talk a bit about some of the tools that are available and have been available before this. Maybe we're now seeing more. Who wants to go first?
But to put it another way, instead of talking about tools, why don't we talk about the things you can do, and then we'll go across and talk about the tools. Okay. So maybe we'll talk about, how to have video lessons. That's one thing. And then how to set assignments. That's another thing. And then how to share resources or centralize resources.
Perfect. Sounds good. Who wants to go first?
You can start then, Darren.
So it's no secret that we predominantly work with the Office 365 stack, so that'll be Teams right now. But everything seems to work, to be honest. I think as long as you can share a video and students can participate in that, it really doesn't matter what technology it is. So we use Teams. So you schedule a meeting. You do that in the context of your class. That seems to work best. And then students are invited to that meeting. They get an invitation. They join in. There are some tweaks you can do so that students don't become presenters. So the teacher is still kind of in charge of it. And in that way, you don't find students muting or unmuting each other, or even muting the teacher, as we've seen in a couple of cases. And then you just run your lesson. You just have a conversation like we're having now. It will be led by the teacher. And then at a certain point, that meeting will close down, and you can record it. You can record it, and it's available as a recording for that class to watch back afterwards.
Yeah, we actually have recording as mandatory in terms of safeguarding issue as well. So we just record all classes that are going on the Google Hangouts that we use. So yeah, with the with video, I think it's quite interesting because I think you've got the live video like you have with Meet. So we've got Hangouts Meet, which is great. And I think a bit of feedback is that for a lot of the academic, if it's a lesson based, it's actually quite good to have a pre-recorded section that kids can pause, can go back over. You can ensure there's a high quality sort of thing that you've put together for that section. I think also it's about being smart in terms of, can teachers, because the workload's gone up massively. If you're creating all these things, you can't do stuff ad hoc and everything has to be pre-thought. You have to think up what mistakes came up, what potential questions have they got, rather than waiting for the kids to raise it, I think. So I think it's about, for us, being smart in terms of pre-recorded stuff that we can use and share with colleagues to try and share that workload across, so we can create a video on a particular part of the specification that we know is going to be valid for the next 3 years or so, and have this again ready for when we try and reuse it for next academic year. I think using something, screencasting software. So with the iPads, you've got it built into the operating system. We use Screencastify, which with the free model, you can record up to 5-minute sections, which actually works quite well because it makes you have to think about, can I get it done within that 5 minutes? I ended up being a bit of a cheat on that and kind of I paid for it just because then I didn't have to worry about if I stopped. So I've gone over and I've been like, you get carried away and it might go for 15 minutes or something. But so I think that's been good. But then we're having the live hangouts in terms of more pastoral stuff and maybe a plenary on the end. So you can quite a lot of parents have been quite happy with us if you log in and then everyone could just check on everybody in the morning, so everyone just sees everybody's there. They have a little chat with their form tutor, right, how's everything going, how was the holiday, maybe when we get back. And then but it also works as a plenary, sort of a summarising at the end of a lesson, just kind of picking on a few people. And it's really interesting how closely it resembles being in a classroom. You just pick on somebody and they're like, oh right, okay, yeah, and you randomly it's quite good.
The virtual chalk or the virtual little Johnny, stop.
Yeah. You can, Classroom has a sort of on the Android version, it has a random name generator from within the thing, so you can just click that and if you're sharing your screen or whatever. And it's been good. It would be naive to say that it has not been difficult for teachers to get across the idea. It is interesting in the fact that we present all day, every day, but just the difference of recording yourself, pre-recording, or being on a screen where you can't tell what else is going on for those other people, I think has been interesting. So I think removing a few of those blocks, I think, and showing the power of technology for people that maybe have thought, I've been doing this. So we've had somebody who hasn't used their Chromebook in maybe a year or something. They've got a PC in their room, and I don't see that. We don't want every lesson in a normal school for them to be just jumping on a device or something. But he came in and he's like, can you get me up to speed on this? Because I need to do this. Because at the end of the day, they want the best for the students. So if this is what has to be done, they're willing to go through that and innovate. And it's going to be positive going forwards.
And I'd actually wanted to ask you that question. Have you had staff who have been awkward? Don't say any names, of course, but who've been awkward, not necessarily adopted things in the way they want to, but now they're real kind of leaders. I remember back from a school when I was a network manager, I had one teacher who was like, I'm not having a laptop. No way am I having a laptop, or that kind of thing. Within 2 years, they were assigning work to kids from home to sixth formers. Yeah. And it really is kind of like all of a sudden they realize the power, or they're forcing to do something, and they absolutely run with it.
Yeah, obviously with everything you've got this this curve, haven't you? Like the distribution, you've got people up at the top end, the vanguard, and then you've got people on the tail, and you'll find that on whatever level you're at. So in a school, you're going to have that massively. So what you're trying to do is constantly push that tail forward, so that that's putting things on Google Classroom, homeworks are on there. You're just pushing the minimum stuff along. They can check in emails, doing online registers and stuff, and pushing that bit. And then, so I think, we're going to find a lot of people doing videos. We've had teachers kind of doing their own video, like with a guitar and making up their own Spanish songs.
They really are bored at home, aren't they?
It's mad what people are doing, but I think it's amazing what they are.
Do you not just think maybe this is giving teachers a bit more time? Because I always get the sense that teachers, like you said, they wanted to do the best for the kids, but they're just so busy. They're busy actually being in the lessons. And I wonder if we've now given them a bit more freedom. Certainly the consultancies that I do, normally we have a couple of people on there. There's usually somebody technical. There might be one person from the curriculum, a business leader. I've been doing consultancies lately, and I've had like 9 people on the call because they're all free to do those things they weren't able to do before.
Yeah, I mean, time's an interesting one, because I think if you spoke to people, they'll be saying that this is taking them into their evenings and all the rest of it. But I think that's why they're learning the techniques and things. It's taking long, like with all these things. Yeah, and I think it's priorities as well, because obviously we've all got the same 24 hours in the day. But it's, why do some people prioritize learning this or trialing this new bit of software, and somebody else will say, well, it works as it is, doesn't it? And so I think it's interesting seeing that now with their priority, they have to get this content across to these kids. So what can they do about that? So it's really about establishing a culture where you can have people ask questions. So you want so you've got a formal structure for that. We've got a Google Apps administrator who can sort out Wi-Fi problems and get on and screen share and take over their Chromebook and actually fix technical issues, but also sort of a more of a the WhatsApp groups that are going, oh, I tried this thing today and it was really good. And so it's been quite interesting. We've got some Twitter from the different departments, and we're all sort of following each other. And then the PE department will put forward a workout that they've just put on, and then the business studies teacher will do one of them trying out the workout. And it's quite interesting, the sort of informal chat that's going on and just sharing. It
sounds like it's almost reinvigorating some teachers a bit as well. It's like you've kind of alluded to it, Darren. It's like giving them the opportunity to just try something new, try something more interesting, something different. It's almost permission to kind of go a little bit outside the box, and maybe it's reinvigorating new ideas. And I guess there's a big opportunity and a big responsibility even to capture those things, like make up a song on the guitar or do something different. I guess is an important part from a school's perspective or an education approach perspective, to capture those fresh ideas and say, is there a better way to, not a better way to teach, is there another way to teach to maybe engage people who don't benefit from a sit-down classroom environment, and can we embrace that and use that, or does it just fall by the wayside as soon as this is all over?
Yeah, well, when Alex, were you saying you manage lots of different schools in terms of their infrastructure? What kind of procedures have you got for sharing practice between different schools and things?
In a way, we kind of set a baseline. So we've kind of got a baseline of what we feel should be set up, certain things. But then we kind of give the options to the school. So we're lucky in a way, we built a product that allows them to select that kind of setup that they want. So they can go off and do it. But of course, everybody is different. They still want some form of custom kind of, I don't want students to be able to do one-to-one chat with themselves. So thinking of one school for a particular, within Microsoft Teams, you can do one-to-one chat. Mark and I can chat independently of being in a classroom environment or anything like that. It'd be great as 2 teachers to be able to do that. I actually want to be able to do that too with a student. So I want to be able to talk one-to-one with a student. But by the time I've enabled that, it also means it enables the students to be able to talk to each other unmonitored. And that's some of the technology kind of difficulties that we get. And that's kind of where we're kind of having to explain, look, I really want to give you a little bit more knowledge about how the product works, so then you can make these informed decisions. And I think that's sometimes where partners like us can kind of come in and say, look, it's not just about having teams and doing classrooms. We still want to talk about safeguarding. We still want to make sure that you're not going to get issues. We don't want to have policies broken. Let's kind of support you in your learning, but let's take one step backwards before we plow ahead fairly quickly. Or we've got this template that we've kind of built. We'll implement this. It's quite restricted, but if you find that the stuff that you want to turn back on, then talk to us and we'll get it enabled again for you.
Yeah, and there's a knee-jerk reaction sometimes, which right now is possibly the right thing, the safe thing to do, is to say, yeah, we'll turn chat off, because you could still have conversations in the classes monitored by the teacher. But I think what we'll start to see over time is a relaxing of that. So you might say, well, yeah, we're going to let sixth formers chat to each other, because that's probably safe. And then we'll come down to year 11. Or they might skip year 11 and go down to year 10 straight away and open that up for them as well. So I think those policies will become cleverer as people understand what the options are.
The big tech companies do seem very good at acting on our advice, actually. Google are quite good at iterating forward when you click on the little question mark and you say, this isn't working well enough, we need the ability to do this. A few weeks later, you get a rollout, and it's really good. So now Google Meet, for example, is embedded in Classroom just at the top. Yeah. And that sends a link that has got more restrictions on it than if you just set up a standard Meet between other teachers, say, for example. So
it's interesting. There's a change in the technology landscape over the last few years that we on the Microsoft side are very much familiar with. I think Google's been here for longer, so the rapid development cycles they have, because Google's very much been more SaaS-based, software as a service-based. Microsoft hasn't been up until recently. I think there's been that rapid development, whereas Microsoft has now moved into that world of rapid updates, rapid feature releases, things like that, which can be a pain on its own, but it can also be a benefit, like I said, they're listening to you. Traditionally, we've come from a background of we have to wait 3 to 4 years to see anything significantly different, whereas Google, you've probably seen this for longer, but we're now in that world. I think that's really useful now.
Well, for example, like we just did all the documentation to get people up to speed with setting up Hangouts and doing all that, Hangout Meets, and then 2 weeks later, we're going to have to redo the documentation because now you can do it via Classroom. It'll be far easier. But, you know, it's a good thing because you'd like to be able to say, actually, they've listened to your feedback and look what they've done for us. And it's kind of a bit easier now. But it's interesting you say about the chat in the background, because I think when they're working at home, it is quite interesting in terms of if you're looking at a primary school. So we're right through from nursery up to A level. So obviously you would normally maybe have sixth form are allowed to bring your own device, so they can bring whatever device they're in. Then we're managed Chromebooks through the year 7 to year 11, and then we've only got bookable sort of borrowable class sets below that in juniors. So when a parent lets a junior school kid on and logs on onto our school domain, they sort of have got an amount of trust that they can say that everything we're doing is monitored, and that we need to be able to monitor the fact that they can't just set up a meet between themselves and they're having a hangout at night because their parents are thinking, well, they signed on the school device, so it should be managed. Whereas I think near every single year 7 plus will have a mobile phone, in which case they're going to be chatting anyway. In terms of this kind of thing, I mean, one of the things we've got now is going to be, how do we set end of year assessments? In terms of how can you guarantee in school we could do managed Chromebooks, we can do locked Google Forms so that they can't get on any other tab and do anything else, but they're going to be at home, they could take a picture of that, share it to their friend. So do we say there's a difference in, do we do open book or do we do more coursework and use stuff like so within Classroom you've got originality reports, which then gives you a percentage about how similar your work is to other published and other submitted work. So that's my biggest headache at the moment, really, trying to work out, okay, what's going to be a decent level to give kids who've worked, hard for 2/3 of the year, some sort of culmination at the end of it to say, right, well, I got through this and I managed to do this assessment. So that's going to be our next, as a department, we're going to have to get our heads together on what kind of assessments are we doing. And that's what schools are going to have to be doing, really, and how, that's going to be interesting. That's
really interesting. I mean, there are obviously things that are in place. Like I know if you do sort of certifications, then you can have them, you can do them remotely, but you set up your desktop, you have your webcam on, everything out. But that's a one-to-one. You can't do that en masse with kids in the classroom. So it's not a model that I think would fit through. But I can imagine that's very difficult. I just want to switch tack a little bit on the last few minutes. I don't want to run this video too long. There's a couple of other topics I just want to touch on before we go. I think we've kind of skirted around a few of them a little bit. Some of the comments that have been made around people chatting, people setting up their own meets and things like that. Things around kind of copy and work, that kind of stuff. We've mentioned safeguard a couple of times. So one of the major things that schools are very much involved in is actually safeguarding the kids, identifying vulnerable children, things like that, monitoring the children's mental health and supporting that. So whether you guys are the right forum or not to answer this, I don't know. Tell me if you're not. But I guess one question is, how does it change now that the children are not in the classroom? Are we able to support them and understand when somebody may be at risk and identify that? Please tell me if you're not the right people to answer these questions, but I have some thoughts around how do we approach that And if we're providing technology assets to them, as we've just said, do we have a responsibility for tracking that? But then when does it go too far and we're invading people's private homes and hearing conversation backgrounds? This is a minefield. I know I've not left much time, but do we have any thoughts on those scenarios?
Just that it needs to be a multidisciplinary approach, really. So teachers are one of the people that look after the children, especially looked after children. But also you have social workers in the mix and healthcare professionals, and really all of those people normally have an interface and visit the home. That's getting less. We know that social workers are visiting less. They're prioritizing. We know that health professionals are super busy and won't be seeing those kids as much. So there is a responsibility, an increased responsibility on schools to do those checks. But it's very difficult because, nobody can force a student in their home to turn the video on. Just because, we're all doing this and we've got our videos on. Lots of students, first of all, won't want to do that. They'll feel uncomfortable. Their houses that they live in, the place, the bedrooms that they're in, that they're doing this work and these chats, they might not want to show their friends and their peers what that bedroom looks like. Obviously, we've got the ability to move into Minecraft, which is which is great.
Alex
lives there all the time.
No, I mean, I can change it. I mean, that's how we're available. I mean, let's change it to something I prepared for this evening for the footballing quiz this evening. But you're right. I mean, I was talking to an SEN teacher the other day, and she's absolutely petrified for her kids. She works in an inner city school in Birmingham, and she can't have that one-to-one relationship. That's how they do teachings, where students have got some form of special educational needs. She's actually petrified for them because education gave them some form of stability. It gave them somewhere to go every day. It gave them that meal every day, that hot meal every single day. And now it's absolutely petrified of these kids who actually have got no support, no structure, maybe no help at home. And I guess that's the real challenge of some of the things that we've got now is kind of how can we still support them and what state are they going to be in when they can come back to school?
I'll also add into that as well. Sorry, Mark, I will come on to you after, but you've made me think of something there. As I know I mentioned it, we mentioned about children from deprived and maybe poorer backgrounds as well, but not friends through Mark's school, but from another friend in a good school with lots of affluent kids and things there. But actually, it's not just the poor and deprived. There's just as much stress, just as much pressure on the kids from the good school. In some cases, maybe more so, because there's an expectation that they're rich and they're all fine and everything. But actually, that puts a lot of pressure on them as well. So it's not just the poor and deprived, but I think across the whole school system, there's that stress. So I think that it goes across the whole board from what I've heard from friends in schools.
And the kids are missing something here, aren't they? They're missing the social interaction that they have in the playground and the classroom.
Yeah, we've got the title of this conversation, the isolation conversation. They're going to be isolated. They haven't got everything's up in the air. If parents are stressed about, they were affluent, but the businesses, a lot of, the kids who have got the devices and stuff, their parents are small business owners that maybe not doing so well, that stress passes on. So I think that's why we have gone for that routine and trying to get form tutors to have a little live conversation. They're seeing their peers in there. And then, people do have plans that would normally be supported by, heads of pastoral or year heads, and they're having to sort of do this one-to-one. It's taking time, but I think trying to maintain a little bit of contact often. So we've got all our year tutors and stuff. We keep registers on. If you haven't seen a student, so year 12 or year 13, especially you're thinking 11 and 13 now are going, well, maybe I don't have to do any exams. Why bother, interacting with any of this stuff? I mean, motivation is going to be an issue for a lot of things in that situation. So if you haven't had contact with them, can you just put a note in here that of anything you've said? So we have spreadsheets, just shared sheets with the day, and have you had any contact with these kids? And if they haven't, then we're contacting parents and going through it that way. So just keeping constantly monitoring, like you say, multidisciplinary, so each teacher taking a little bit of responsibility, but having systems in place to check that nobody's getting forgotten, really. Yeah, and maintaining the communication, because I think that's what parents have said. It's just nice being continually, sent little video messages and just, having the communication, feeling all not isolated. Yeah, like this this conversation's doing for us right now. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, so I think we're kind of running towards the end. So the last little bit I'd like to do, and that was a very big topic, and the mental health and the way that's affecting people is something that I'm following as a common thread through all the episodes of the videos here. So that's something I was particularly interested to talk about a bit. And I guess we could do a full session just on that alone if we let it. But just to finish off in the last kind of few minutes, then I'm curious. So what can kids at home do? What can parents at home do? So if we've got any tips that people can do at home to help the teachers deliver education? Is there anything that parents can do to homeschool? Is there any kind of just general guidelines that maybe parents and children at home can take on board?
I think go ahead, Alex. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I've got a 3-year-old, right? So she's not going to nursery. She can't get out. We can't go out and play. We can't go and do the things we normally do. So the first thing is I've downloaded recipes. So I can't quite see that because of the screen in the background. But I've got recipes that we've downloaded so we can do stuff. So we can still do counting. We can still do certain things. I've got stuff here from education.com where I've got worksheets for a particular age. Now it's not necessarily the right thing from an education point of view because you don't know what level they're at, and you could download something that's more year 9 and then more year 7. It's too challenging, but hopefully it still forms some form of education still in the students to keep them going and keep them busy and that kind of thing. And that's certainly what I'm doing with my little one.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, actually. It's just kind of teach what you know, because you're not teachers. Teaching
that's not the current way of doing maths, then.
No, exactly.
How to do maths these days.
What's a quotient? What? Take away. What? So people don't have those skills, in the same way as I wouldn't try and drive a big lorry. I think it's unfair to ask parents to homeschool. That verb, homeschooling, I think is unfair on parents. Your parents, you're stressed anyway, probably, as you said, Mark. And I think if you can just be with your kids and do things with them that are constructive and positive and that they can learn from, and there might be some maths in it accidentally, there might be cooking or whatever, there might be some science in it because that's what cooking is science. That's great. If you're doing that with your kids, if you're spending time with your kids, be really proud of yourself for doing that, and don't try and teach phonics. Please, because
I guess before Mark, you've probably got the best tips because you're the real teacher here. But I guess is there a risk that we could actually damage education by trying to teach them at home? Because there's all, like I say, I joke about maths. There's all these new ways of doing maths. Similar to Alex, my little boy is only 4, so I'm not in the school system yet. But I'm hearing all parents talking about all these box methods for doing multiplication or division or whatever it is, and I don't know that, so I'm just going to go teach them long division or something. So could I actually do damage to their education by or confuse them more by teaching them things that I did 20 years ago that maybe they shouldn't be doing now?
I think surely it's teaching mastery for the kid. If your kid that you're working with can do those long division and it works for them, surely that method will work fine. I don't think that's too much wrong, but I do think it massively depends on the age of the kid, doesn't it? So I've got a 5 and a 7-year-old. And we're sort of getting into the Harry Potter world. We're doing little bits of it's short and sweet in terms of we've got like a little app, like press the button. Something's just an iOS app that you can just go on. And 10 minutes of that in the morning is good. And then writing a little journal about something you did and trying to support them, like working. Just because surely we have to spin this into a positive in terms of how often are you going to get this time with your kids?
It's incredible.
With somebody, it's a one-to-one. Because you've got to think you're spending time one-to-one in a. You might not be an expert in whatever subject you are, but quite often you'd be maybe in a state school of 1 to 30, 1 to 35 or something. In a good class it might be 1 to 20. So how much individual interaction are they getting? And can you learn together? Can you put a documentary on? Like the kids that come up with me and surprise me, the ones that have their niche and they really know about that. Like they're talking about this adaptation this particular animal has that lives deep under the sea or something, and say, oh, that's like this, and they see links between stuff. If you can like capture wonder or awe in the things that are around you, and we have a bit of time to spend doing that. I suppose it's the time when you're trying to, what can you do constructively with them while you're also trying to video conference here and do your work. So it's about maybe trying to have trying to set reasonable expectations. You can't teach them anything new during that time, because I've kind of found if I'm teaching them some maths or something, I need to be there to support them there and there. If they're doing their journal, it's not something I have to be with them while they're doing it, otherwise they'll get stuck at that age. But maybe not beating yourself up, have a bit of something quality in the morning, a bit of something quality in the afternoon, and let them. Isn't it the whole thing of like, we want creative? We talked on this. I'd love to talk to you guys about what do we want from our learners when they get into the workplace. But we talk about this kind of, they've always got some device in their hand. They're always like, they never get bored. So they never get maybe that creative spark. Like, literally let them just be. Can they come up with their own game? Can they create their own game? Like, give them some stuff, come up with a set of rules, or loads of different things like that they could surely have a go at. And
provide them with the tools, and they'll build it the way that you want to do. If you say, here is a set of tools, I want you to build a train, they will build it the way that they will know how to build it. And as long as they build a train, that's all that matters.
Yep.
And then you can talk about what how could this be improved? Like, how did you work together on this? It's talking about those kind of, with a one-to-one person, like, how did you come up with this? Like the metacognitive aspect, why did you think about that? Or how could you do that next time? Or is that similar to this one? Or,
I had a conversation a long time ago with someone. It was actually someone who works in an organisation called Primary Engineer. I don't know if any of you come across them, but it's a great outreach program. But I asked the questions like, when do kids lose imagination? We're talking about hackathons, some of the stuff that the kids were coming up with at a young age, at primary ages, the solutions to some of the things that these kids in the primary engineer program were doing. And I was fascinated by the solutions they came up with. I'm like, when do we lose that capability to come up with that kind of ingenious...
I never had it.
Solution. And I can't remember the exact answer that I was given, but it is when you hit a certain point of education and you do start getting told what to think. And there is a point where we do lose that as we grow up. And you're right, give them the tools, and it's interesting to see what they will come up with. And that's fascinating. So, Mark, from your perspective, then, so I think some good tips there from Hono. Just do stuff. It's difficult for me because both me and my wife are trying to work full time. She's a solicitor, a lawyer working in employment, so she's massively busy in a minute. Me and technology, massively busy. So one thing we've had to teach ourselves over the last couple of weeks is we can't do a full-time job. The kids need that one-to-one attention. They do. When we take it in turns to work, the one who's not working has got to focus on them. Yeah. But the other thing we find, Alex, at your daughter's age, I wonder if you see the same thing, but when we go on holiday, we see their development spike, like the ability to talk spiking. My little girl's about to turn 2 at the beginning of May, and since she's been at home with us for the last couple of weeks, we see her ability to speak just increase so rapidly because of that one-to-one engagement they get. Like, our kids go to nursery 4 days a week, so they get a lot of support and education. That's a very good, outstanding nursery. But even when they spend time with us, we see that massive boost. I think, let's say, that one-to-one time, and us putting our phones down and engaging with them as well, and us not ignoring them. Like, it's made me realise how much eye contact my 4-year-old and even my 2-year-old needs. Like, they hold eye contact so much, and if you're in your phone trying to talk to them, they pick up on it, and that's when they get naughty.
What was any scope for any of those kind of things? Mindfulness, kind of, we do get distracted by things. Can we just be in the moment with our family and
So the episode 2, which should be going out today or tomorrow morning, we're talking about mindfulness as well. Obviously that's not out, so you guys haven't seen it yet, but there's a big part of that is actually that mindfulness, that well-being, and that wellness, and that's a huge part of it. I think we need to understand that more to help them. So right, that's fantastic. I think we kind of run a little bit over the time I had, but thank you so much, guys. I think that was a really interesting conversation. I don't know if anyone has any final thoughts to give, or if you're kind of happy to close down there.
No, that was good. Yeah, thanks for that, Mark.
It's all good.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate it. For us, this will go out in about a week's time. I look forward to getting out there. I think that was a really useful and interesting conversation. Lots of really good tips. So thank you very much for joining me, everyone. And take care. Stay safe.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Thanks for joining the Isolation Conversation. Visit our website www.thisisattollo.com for latest information, or hit the subscribe button and the like button to make sure you never miss an episode. Whilst you're at it, if you found value in this episode, we'd really appreciate you leaving a comment below or sharing a link to the show with your friends and colleagues, and that would really help us out. Be sure to tune in next week for our next episode, and until then, it's a huge thanks from me for watching.